The Singing Chef. It's the most wonderful time of the year. That's what I call Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving is a holiday that's all about being with your family and saying what you're grateful for, but it is always all about the food, which is my favorite. So today I'm going to share for you another Robert's family side dish recipe that is always at our table on Thanksgiving. For those of us in the South, we actually serve, rather than stuffing, what we call cornbread dressing. It is not stuffed in the bird itself. It is actually just a side dish that comes with your turkey and your cranberry sauce and all the other fixings that you would normally have. And so today I'm going to share with you how I make cornbread dressing. Southern classic. I think you're going to love it. So there are a couple of steps that happen prior to even trying to put this dish together, because you need to actually make two of the ingredients before you start the dish. One of those for cornbread dressing is obviously some cornbread. So I have made some buttermilk cornbread here. It's a pretty big, like 13-inch cast iron skillet worth of cornbread. If you get a package of self-rising cornmeal mix, you will see directions on there for how to make a batch of cornbread. Mine has buttermilk in it. It also has some vegetable oil. I put some Crisco around the pan, and I put it into a 450-degree oven for about 5 minutes before I even put the batter in. So I take the hot pan out, put the batter in. That gives us some crispy edges on the edges of your cornbread. But make any kind of cornbread you want, as long as it's about this much, which, like I said, that's about a 13-inch, maybe even 14-inch cast iron skillet worth. If you've got a recipe that calls for like an 8 or a 9-inch cast iron skillet, which is what I think the package that I had called for its recipe, just double it, and then you should have plenty of buttermilk cornbread ready to go. So first thing I'm going to do is take this cornbread out of my pan. As you can see, it pops out nice and easy thanks to that Crisco that we put on there, and you can see it's a beautiful golden brown color. And then I've got a giant mixing bowl over here, and all I'm going to do is crumble all of this cornbread into this giant mixing bowl. Get all of that goodness in there. It's good cornbread. I think mine has some salt in it too for some flavor. You could put in some melted butter into the mix. And I'm just getting in there with God's utensils, my hands, and crumbling up all of that good cornbread. I took it out of the oven and I let it sit for a while, just until it cooled down, obviously so that I could handle the pan and the cornbread itself. I'm just going to crumble through the majority of this before I get going on any other steps. All right, so you can see I've got my cooking eye over here. I'm going to heat up this pan over here because we're going to saute some things that are going to go into the mix for this cornbread. So I got to get those prepped. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take about a medium-sized onion and give it a good chop. So cut off one end, flatten it, cut it in half. That should make it pretty easy to peel off this outer layer. There we go. Toss that in my garbage bowl that's down here. Get all these peels off my board. Peel the other side. We're just going to do a rough chop Another great ingredient that is going to go in the mix with this, it's going to really flavor it, is some fresh herbs. I actually have a sage plant that I specifically bought to grow in my little herb garden out back for this recipe. Sage and rosemary are coming to the party today. All right, so I'm just gonna hold my hand flat and slice across the center of the onion. Then you still got that root in there, right? So I'm gonna cut lengthwise through my onion, all the way down to the bottom of the board. And then rock the knife through to give us a good chop. Throw the root end into your garbage. I missed a slice, so I'm going back through. Just want to get these even. There's no rhyme or reason to the size. It's going all in the mix of this dressing, so your knife cuts aren't imperative as if we were going to necessarily see them in the dish. Same thing with the other half of the onion. Cut straight into the side, keeping your hand out of the way. Cut vertical through all the way to the root. Then come back and cut across to chop. Voila. One onion chopped, just like that. Perfect. Great. So there's our onion. Next we need about 2 stalks of celery, again for just some added flavor. And I like it as actual sort of texture and crunch within the dressing too. And sometimes when I want like a fine dice, I'll split the rib of celery down the center. I actually want hunks of celery throughout the dressing. So I'm not even gonna do that. All I did was chop off the ends, toss those away. And then I'm just gonna rock my knife through even some pretty decent sized chopped slices of the celery. You see some pieces that are a little too big, you can certainly cut those in half. Like once I get down to the tail end, it's a little wider. I may cut that down a little bit, just so that they're approximately the same. Yeah, that's 2 ribs of celery chopped. All right, so now that my pan is heated up, I can get a little drizzle of olive oil in the pan, and into that pan goes all of my onion and my celery. Very good. In you go. Shake that around and let it saute for a bit. I'm gonna put a little bit of salt in just to season those veggies. Next, garlic. You guys know, most dishes that I make have onions and garlic within them. So I'm gonna use 3 cloves of garlic for this batch. I'm just gonna mince those pretty fine. So put some pressure on the clove to release it from the peel. Same thing with these 2. Crush through the peel, toss, last clove, and just like that. Feels pretty easy. Great. And then, I'm just gonna take each clove, curl my fingers under, and run my knife through. Take that root end, toss that away. You don't want that in the mix. Then go back through the other direction to get a pretty good mince on that garlic. Same thing with the other 2 cloves. Slice down to the root, toss that. Come back through the other direction. One more. Then just run your knife through on the board. You definitely want a pretty fine mince on the garlic. You don't want anybody to just bite into a hunk of garlic. Pile it together. Run it. There we go. All right. stray peel in there. Get that out of my way. And then in can go those 3 cloves of minced garlic. Stir those together. I'm gonna let those saute for about 4 or 5 minutes or so before we're ready to add them to the pan. So I'm gonna let these go for a little while and I'll be right back. All right, y'all, we are back. All right, next step in the process. These onions have started to get pretty translucent. Celery's still cooking a little bit. I'm going to give it 1 more pinch of salt and a pinch of black pepper. Season everything up. Stir all that around. Great. Now that the onions are pretty well translucent, the last thing I'm going to add is a stick of butter. It's already at room temperature, but I'm going to toss this stick of butter in with all the onions, celery, and garlic. This butter makes everything better, right? I mean, come on. Get that butter into the mix. Toss it around in my onions and celery. Perfect. Oh my gosh, looks so good. All right. While that is simmering away, I promised you some fresh herbs, and we're going to add that next. So, I've got some fresh rosemary. Oh, it's like one of the perfect holiday seasonings is rosemary. And fresh, to me, is always better than, even if you just buy it from the store fresh, that's better than I think the dried stuff for this recipe specifically. I just got about 2 twigs of that, pulled all the leaves off, and I'm gonna do a rough chop through my rosemary. Get that nice and broken down. Because again, you don't want any one hit of flavor. You want this all to meld together. Just like the garlic, we minced it pretty fine. I'm definitely gonna make sure that my rosemary is pretty fine too. Perfect. Put that over to the side. And then I have some fresh sage. Again, just a really, really fragrant. I'm only using like, I don't know, 4 or 5 leaves of sage, because sage is a pretty strong herb, fresh or not, but especially when you use fresh sage, it's like really, really strong, can overpower your dish really easily. So only 3, 4, 5 leaves of these, I think, is plenty of flavor. And I'm gonna actually take these, I've stacked all the leaves on top of each other, and then from the end opposite to the stem, I'm just gonna roll them, kind of like a cigar, to chiffonade these, at least to start, okay? So then I take my cigar and I just chop through with my knife. And that gives you like really pretty ribbons, but I actually want to break it down even further. If you were doing like a chiffonade for a decoration or a garnish, you may leave it there, but I'm gonna actually continue. That just helped me get the sage into strips, and I'm gonna continue chopping through that sage. Perfect. And lastly, I'm gonna toss all of that sage and rosemary into the veggies that are over here sauteing in a bath of butter. Perfect. And once those hit that heat, oh my gosh, the smell that hits you is so good, and it does not take long. Immediately, those fresh herbs are so fragrant. This kitchen smells so good. It smells like Thanksgiving, y'all. All right. Once the herbs are in and you've just really stirred them in, all the stuff that's in this pan, you can turn off your heat. All the stuff that's in this pan goes into, still warm is fine, into all of the cornbread that we broke up in our giant mixing bowl. And you're gonna want a big enough mixing bowl to have a little space to work, okay? So now, let's talk about what else is going in this. I love to add to this so that I can just eat it all by itself. Some protein. So for chicken and dressing or turkey and dressing, I think the cheaper option and the easier option is to roast some chicken breasts, chop that up and put it into your dressing. It's a power punch of flavor into the dressing, and it just gives you, oh my gosh, there's like chicken in this. It's like having a meal all in one dish. So you can actually refer to a previous recipe that I gave you for roasting chicken breasts. And I've got like 3 really small chicken breasts here that I put in the oven with some lemon and garlic and butter and olive oil and wine. And I've got those roasted up. I did that about the same time that I did my cornbread. It's about the same temp, just to make sure they're cooked through. This takes about 30 minutes. The cornbread took about 30 minutes too, so it kind of times out great. Then you take those out and let those cool down so that you can actually handle them like I am. So I'm just gonna take these 3 small chicken breasts out of my dish. I know this looks like several steps to get this one dish done, but trust me, it's worth it, first of all. And the cool thing about this recipe is you can do all of this stuff like days in advance of Thanksgiving if you want to, and then just keep it in the fridge, and then on the day of Thanksgiving you've got it ready to go into your oven. Same thing with the sweet potato casserole that I did a recipe for. You could totally do all the prep before you even bake it, put it in your fridge, and wait till Thanksgiving Day, pop that baby in the oven, and you're good to go. So with these chicken breasts, I'm just gonna run my knife through each of them. I may not even need all 3. It's just what I happen to have in a package. And I'm not looking for any particular size or shape. You do want it to be small enough that it's just sort of a surprise that you find in the dressing. You don't want it to be a feature, right? So pretty small pieces of chicken, like an inch or so. And with each breast, pop it into your mixing bowl. That's the other great thing about this is you really only have to have one little mixing bowl here. All right, let's do this other large breast. Cut through from end to end. Then come back through those pieces to get it down to the size you want. No rhyme or reason here. Just trying to get as many pieces of chicken in to the dish. Some are larger than others, that's okay. There's my second breast of chicken. You know what, this one's like really, really tiny. Why not? Let's put it in. Could have saved it for lunch tomorrow, but I'm feeling generous. It's Thanksgiving, right? There I go. Oh, that chicken in there. Great. Okay, now, some store-bought ingredients are the last step before we put this in a casserole dish. I'm gonna put away this board, get those ready to go, and Happy Thanksgiving, y'all. We are back, and we are ready to finish assembling our Southern Cornbread Dressing for our Thanksgiving meal. Got all my ingredients here in my mixing bowl except for 2, okay? The first thing I'm gonna add to this mixture is we're gonna add some liquid at this point. There was already a little bit of liquid from the butter, but now I need to add a little bit more. I've got 2 cans of cream of chicken soup. There's the first thing I'm gonna add. Again, flavor, flavor, flavor into the bowl. That's 1. That's that can. Second can goes in. I mean, I keep cans of cream of chicken soup and cream of mushroom soup in my pantry all the time because, you know, Southern boys gotta have casseroles every now and then. There's a whole lot of recipes that call for those things. So 2 cans of cream of chicken soup into the mix. And the last thing we're gonna add is some chicken broth. If you make your own, great. But you're gonna need probably about at least 4 cups, maybe 5 to 6 of chicken broth in this mix. So I'm gonna start with this first box. Pour about half in. I don't need much more salt, but just in case, just add a pinch. But I definitely want some more black pepper. There's lots of salt in that cream of chicken soup, so don't need a lot of that. But I'm gonna hit it with probably at least a full tablespoon, almost 2 of black pepper. Now that I got everything playing together in the bowl, you're just gonna lift with your spoon and stir everything together, mixing the soup and the chicken and the cornbread and all those veggies and herbs together into one homogeneous, that was a $4 word for me, mix of things. Now, when you bake cornbread dressing, the trick that I've learned from watching many people in my family make this is that you want this mix to be very wet, okay? A lot of the moisture is gonna cook out when you bake it, okay? It's already starting to even the crust of the cornbread is kind of mixing in and breaking down with the liquid that's already in there. But that's not quite enough broth. So I'm gonna add the rest of this first box. Again, just kind of judge it as you go, depending on how much of this you made. Stir that in. Put some elbow grease behind it. Get everything mixed together. Now we're talking. It's gonna be kind of a, soupier consistency than you would think for like a bread dish. But trust me, you're gonna want it to have lots of moisture, because there's nothing worse. Well, that's such an exaggeration to say there's nothing worse, but dry dressing, it's not that great. Rest of that in, because the cornbread itself, regardless of what the oven's going to do to dry it out, the cornbread's going to soak up all of that broth and soup as you're mixing this together. That is pretty great with just that one box. I'm going to keep the other one in reserve in case I think it needs more. This is looking pretty great. And at this point, I actually am going to taste this mixture. Everything in here so far is cooked. I just want to taste for seasoning real quick. Yeah, there's a lot of flavor in there. I think, based on that bite, I need maybe another teaspoon or so of black pepper into the mix. There's plenty of salt already, I think, between the broth and the chicken soup. Get that all mixed in there. Last thing I need to add is something to bind this together while it cooks, and that is 3 eggs. You're gonna want to crack these eggs into a bowl and give them just a light beat before you throw them into the mix. I've got a fork here. Just scramble those together like you're making breakfast. And then that goes into the bowl. Then we're gonna get that, clean up a little bit here, get those eggs also incorporated all the way through the dressing mixture. That really is just to help bind this as it cooks, like I said. Oh my gosh, it looks so good. I cannot wait to have this. Dressing is actually, I think, my favorite thing at Thanksgiving. To the point that sometimes I'll cheat on how much I put into my main baking dish, and I'll take a small square baking dish and leave a little extra and then wrap it up tight and put it in the freezer. And then when I'm craving Thanksgiving in March, I can have Thanksgiving again. You can totally do that. You can freeze this, take it out, let it thaw to room temperature, and then just add a little bit of extra chicken stock on top of it. Same thing we're gonna do on Thanksgiving morning when we take this out to put it in the oven. We're gonna add a little bit of extra chicken stock just to like loosen up the mixture a little bit and help it cook after what you take out of the fridge or the freezer comes out and gets to at least close to room temperature before you pop it in the oven. Speaking of the oven, I'm going to preheat my oven on Thanksgiving to 350 degrees, and this is gonna cook for maybe 30 to 45 minutes until it's golden brown on top, okay? We're gonna put this into a baking dish. I've got a 13x9 baking dish here, and I'm gonna use some cooking spray just to spray the bottoms and the sides of the pan to make sure that my dressing doesn't stick when I'm ready to take it out. And then it's just a matter of getting it in there. So I'm gonna take all of this mixture, put it into my baking dish. Oh my gosh, it's gonna be so good. Yes, set that to the side and then just spread everything like a cake almost into a single layer in your baking dish. And you are good to go. Like I said, you can totally make this a couple of days in advance so that it's not something you have to put together on the day of Thanksgiving. I hate, if I'm having guests for Thanksgiving, a stressful Thanksgiving day before I even get to sit and enjoy. So I try to prep as much as I can before they even arrive. That looks amazing. Now, like I said, once I take this out of the fridge, I'm gonna put a little more of this chicken stock. You actually wanna kinda even see like small puddles of the chicken stock on the top. You want it that wet because the cornbread's gonna soak it all up, and the oven is definitely gonna do some drying action for you. You really want this to be a moist dish on the side dish. You don't want it to dry out completely or it's not nearly as good. I'm gonna pop this in the fridge and I'll see you on Thanksgiving. Hey y'all, welcome back. It is Thanksgiving and I am so excited because I have my favorite part of Thanksgiving out of the oven. This beautiful Southern cornbread dressing that's gonna go alongside my turkey and my mashed potatoes and my cranberry sauce and that beautiful sweet potato casserole that we made in the last video. This is my favorite part. Cannot wait to show you. You can probably see it from there, but I've got to give you an up close and personal view. Look how beautifully golden brown that dressing is. I mean, come on. That is what we're looking for. All right, got to get a little taste, so plate up just a little bitty corner piece here. It's just crisped around the edges and it's still moist in the middle thanks to all that chicken broth that we put in. Oh yeah, there's a piece of that roasted chicken right in the middle. Look at this. I mean, come on. I want all of that. So got a taste. See how we did. Let's still steaming hot because it just came out of the oven. This is next level comfort food. It's the deal. You guys have got to try to make this cornbread dressing. It is worth every minute that you spent on making the cornbread and the chicken to put that in there for some extra flavor. The sage is running all the way through it, and the rosemary. I could make a meal out of this. And after Thanksgiving, put this between 2 slices of bread with a little bit of cranberry sauce, maybe the turkey. You don't really even have to have the turkey, but that is a sandwich to die for too, for your after Thanksgiving meal. I really do hope you'll give this recipe a shot. This is how my family does Thanksgiving, and I want you to be part of the family. Eat well, love always, and happy Thanksgiving. Bon appetit, y'all.